From Washington to Moscow, from New York to Paris, from Rome to Jerusalem, around the world, the prophecies of the Bible are being fulfilled. J.R. Church, author and lecturer, is standing by with today's analysis of Bible prophecy. History has reached an impasse. The world is soon to see the return of Jesus Christ. And now, here is J.R. Church with today's Prophecy in the News.
Though the citizens of Texas recently voted no to electronic funds transfer, they have not heard the end of it. The international bankers who are bent on giving our world a cashless and checkless society are not going to take it lying down. We will someday soon have a cashless society, a one-world money system designed to replace currency and coin with computers is inevitable. The prophet John, in the book of the Revelation, chapter 13, prophesied that one day the world would not be able to buy or sell, save he that had the number. If I believe history, and if I believe the statements made by the leaders of yesterday, then I must believe that those who control the money of this world will play a major role in the affairs of men. Reginald McKenna, who served as Chancellor of England's Exchequer, or Treasury, in 1924 said, and I quote, "I am afraid that the ordinary citizen will not like to be told that the banks can and do create money, and they who control the credit of a nation direct the policy of the governments and hold in the hollow of their hands the destiny of the people," unquote. Sir Drummond Fraser, once vice president of the Institute of Bankers, said in England, "The governor of the Bank of England must be the autocrat who dictates the terms upon which alone the government can obtain money." Lord Gladstone, who also served as Chancellor of Britain's Exchequer, said in the year 1852, quote, "The government, in the matters of finance, must leave the money power supreme and unquestioned." In 1881, President James Garfield said, quote, "He who controls the money of a nation controls the nation." Back in 1933, Vice President John Garner referred to the international bankers when he said, "You see, gentlemen, who owns the United States." In 1920, 9 years before the stock market crash, Congressman Charles Lindbergh of Minnesota said, "Financial panics are scientifically created." Meyer Amschel Rothschild once said, "Give me control over a nation's economy, and I care not who writes its laws." Karl Marx, in his Communist Manifesto, declared, quote, "Money plays the largest part in determining the course of history." Our Federal Reserve banks are a part of the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and they plan to establish a new money system to replace the old. What then, may I ask, will be the fate of the present currencies of the Western world? Would there be a rash of suicides and a cry of despair from the lips of millions, as there was when the stock market crashed in 1929, or when the German mark was canceled in 1948? You may wonder, why do we need a new money system? Well, they say, simply because there is not enough gold and silver to go around. Oh, how true that is. We spend more money in one day on the military of the world, just the military, than all the gold in the world. And they say that there is not enough paper and not enough ink, nor enough presses or enough man-hours to keep up with the burgeoning of the population. Have you ever wondered where some of the terminology comes from in history, such as "I had to shell out or he paid his fee, or he's not worth his salt. Well, these are terms that comes from ancient monies. When you say, I had to shell out for something, that comes from the term used in China and India back centuries ago when shells were used for money. They were used for money in Africa and even in the Americas, and shells are still used today for money along the west coast of Africa. The expression paying a fee had its origin in Germany. There, the word for cattle is V-I-E-H, pronounced fee. The farmer would pay his debt with one of his cattle. He was paying a fee. Salt, for instance, was used in the 1st century by the Roman Empire and also used in the 9th century in India for money. The soldiers were paid a salt money or salarium. The Latin word salarium is the ancient word from which our word salary comes. The Anglo-Saxons invaded Britain in the 6th century from the northern continent, from northern Germany, from Norway, and so on. And as they came into Great Britain, they wore metal rings known as shillingas. They traded these ornaments for bread and other necessities. And gradually then, the medium of exchange in England became known as the shilling. The origin of the dollar is also interesting. The first dollar was coined by the Counts of Schlick in 1519. It was called a Joachimsthaler, after Joachimsthal, the place in Bohemia where the silver was mined and minted. Later it was shortened to thaler, T-H-A-L-E-R. Now the Germans used the thaler. The German Reich called it the Reichsthaler. And in Scandinavia it was called the Reichsdollar. In the 18th century it finally became known as the dollar. In 1870, America's banks went on the gold standard. This meant that any American could exchange his paper money for gold. This was changed, however, in 1933, in the aftermath of the crash of '29. President Roosevelt asked Congress to pass legislation demanding that the American people give up their gold. And they redeemed the gold for $20.67 an ounce. Now, once they had all the gold in the coffers of the government, then the government immediately raised the price to $35 an ounce, a $3 billion profit. One day, President Roosevelt asked Senator Carter Glass what he thought about it. That was April 27, 1933, and Senator Glass said, "I think it's worse than anything Alabama's 40 thieves ever perpetrated." Once our government had received all of the gold from the American public, a huge vault was built some 30 miles south of Louisville, Kentucky at Fort Knox. And some 1,500 soldiers continually guard the gold. Also, in a vault 5 stories below Wall Street, the vaults hold more than 100,000 gold bars belonging to various countries of the world. It belongs to foreign banks. After World War II, our nation had some $26 billion in gold. But slowly over the years, that gold has been taken out of the United States until the last figure I had was less than $10 billion in gold remained. This prompted Senator Everett Dirksen to finally say, "We have reached the bottom of the barrel." Inflation, of course, is our biggest enemy, but you know that. Banking is almost as old as the human race. Gold would be left in the care of a trusted friend who would give a receipt on parchment or leather. Loans were made for usury or interest even before the days of Moses. In early America, banks sprang up and issued their own paper money. Couldn't confusion began to reign as people moved from state to state, carrying various forms of paper of diverse value. So in 1863, Abraham Lincoln influenced the passing of the National Bank Act. This provided for a uniform standard of values and regulations. On December 23, 1913, Woodrow Wilson influenced legislation which established the Federal Reserve System. With that, the federal government forfeited the right to create its own money. Our Constitution gives the Congress the right to make coins and currency. And yet, when they instituted the Federal Reserve System, which a lot of people think is owned by the federal government, but it is not. It is owned by a group of international bankers. They think that we still have the power to write our own coins or to create our own currency. It's not true. Now, in 1944, a World Bank was born. It was called the International Monetary Fund, under the sponsorship of the United Nations. This World Bank was necessary because of increased travel, they say. For indeed, last year, 108 million Americans took some 360 million trips, traveling a total of 312 billion miles. And in each country where Americans went, when they tried to exchange the dollar for the local currency, the exchange rates differed. And just as the local pioneers back in the early years of America wanted their local banks to be governed by a National Banking Act, today various nations have been asking for some form of international control. And so, 10 nations led in the establishment of the World Bank. On March 31st, 1968, another significant historical event took place. Paper gold was invented, was introduced for the first time. Now, it is neither paper nor gold. It is called also SDR. It means special drawing rights. It was used to create money on a ledger for the various governments of the world, used only in international banking. However, the day has been predicted when that SDR, or special drawing rights, will be available for every individual on earth. And that's what you will be using for money when the computer replaces our currency and coin. Our billfolds may not contain much currency, but they sure do contain a lot of credit cards. Here's Phillips and Texaco and Gulf and Shamrock and Mobile and Conoco and Exxon and MasterCharge. Sometimes we get so confused our billfolds bulge, but not from money, from credit cards. Well, these credit cards have been introduced to the American public in order to prepare us for a cashless society. One of these days, all of these cards are going to be debunked. And we'll have one card, just one. And all of these various numbers you have, which you in no way can memorize or keep in memory, these numbers will be converted to one number. And it has been suggested that the Social Security number be used for the cashless society. And when it comes, and surely one day it will, perhaps soon, the card then will replace the currency and coin. Eventually, completely. For you see, a person can take the card to the grocery store or wherever you want to purchase something, place the card in a computer, it will tap your bank account, immediately exchange it from your account to the account of the store, and it makes it so simple. Eliminates literally trillions of checks written in the United States every year. And it's supposed to save a lot of money. by the banks. The banks then will become automated. Now, there's only one thing wrong with that. Well, perhaps more than one, but one in particular I want to mention. These can be stolen. And when your card's stolen, somebody can drain you dry. So inevitably, there must be a way to replace the card. It must become foolproof. Now, the card will eliminate the theft of dollars or currency, true. But the theft of cards will then become prevalent. Now, in order to eliminate the possible threat of theft, they'll take the number off of the card and put it on the hand or the forehead in a laser tattoo. Now, the laser tattoo machine has already been invented. It takes a split second to put the number into the skin. It is invisible except their computers can read it. And it's coming. When it comes, who will control it? Communist or capitalist? Banker or president? The peoples of our world are actually not governed by the governments of our world. For the governments of our world are controlled by a group of international bankers. On March 22nd, 1922, John F. Hyland, mayor of New York City, said, "The real menace of our republic is the invisible government, which, like a giant octopus, sprawls its slimy length over our city, state, and nation. At the head is a small group of banking houses, generally known as international bankers. In fact, the man behind the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 was not even an American. He was a German from Hamburg. His name, Paul Warburg. The Honorable Louis McFadden, chairman of the Banking and Currency Committee in 1933, said in a speech to Congress, "Paul Warburg came here from Germany for one purpose, to take over the treasuries of the United States, as the international bankers have done with the treasuries of Europe." Paul Warburg's son, James Warburg, stood before the United States Senate in 1950 on February 17th, and he said in his speech, "We shall have world government, whether we like it or not. The only question is," he said, "whether the world government will be achieved by conquest or consent." There is another international banker. The original one, I suppose, we could say, would be Mayer Amschel Rothschild. He was born in 1743 in Frankfurt, Germany. He began the international banking houses. At least he was the culmination of centuries of control of currencies. He had 5 sons. Mr. Rothschild, with one son, set up a banking house in Frankfurt, Germany. He sent another son to Vienna, another to London, another to Paris, and another to Naples. And they set up international banking houses to loan the governments of Europe money with which to wage war. And then the governments of Europe would have to pay their national debt to the Rothschild banking house back by levying taxes against their people. And thus, taxes came into vogue, if we could call it that. By 1850, the House of Rothschild represented more wealth than all the royal families of Europe and Britain combined. The House of Warburg and the House of Rothschild, along with a few other powerful banking houses, became known as international bankers. They control the currencies of all the countries of the world. Dr. Carroll Quigley, who taught at Princeton and Harvard universities, wrote a book published in 1966 called Tragedy and Hope. In the book, he said that these international bankers remain different from ordinary bankers in distinctive ways. First, they were cosmopolitan and international. Second, They were close to governments and were particularly concerned with the question of government debts. And 3, he said their interests were almost exclusively in bonds. 4, he said they were accordingly fanatical devotees of inflation, creating inflation. And 5, he said they were equally devoted to secrecy and the secret use of financial influence in political life. Dr. Quigley's book was reviewed by Cleon Skousen in his book, The Naked Capitalist. On page 4 of Skousen's book, he wrote about Dr. Quigley. He said, Dr. Quigley makes it clear throughout his book that by and large he warmly supports the goals and purposes of the network. But if that is the case, why would he want to expose this worldwide conspiracy and disclose most of its secret operations? Obviously, disclosing the existence of a mammoth power network which is trying to take over the world could not help but arouse the vigorous resistance of the millions of people who are its intended victims. So why did Dr. Quigley write this book? Dr. Quigley feels that it is now too late for the little people to turn back the tide. In a spirit of kindness, he is urging us not to fight a power that is already established. Throughout his book, Dr. Quigley assures us that we can trust these benevolent, well-meaning men who are secretly operating behind the scenes. They are, he says, the hope of the world, and all who resist them represent tragedy. Thus the title of his book, Tragedy and Hope. Their plan is to destroy our money through inflation, get everybody mortgaged. Then one morning we'll wake up to find that the bank is foreclosed on all property, or should I say the government controlled by the bank, and the value of our dollar will be canceled. A new money will then be issued. It will be an international currency, representing at first 10 nations. On July 4th, 1856, Benjamin Disraeli went before the British House of Commons to say, the world is governed by very different personages from what is imagined by those who are not behind the scenes. In April 1968, Mr. Curtis B. Dahl of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, introduced a book on the Federal Reserve Bank. In it, he wrote, they are driving toward complete control of the world's long-range monetary policy for their own profit. They even foment foreign wars to aid this objective. Mr. Gary Allen, in his book None Dare Call It Conspiracy, spoke of this group. He called them insiders. The Council on Foreign Relations, headed up by Mr. David Rockefeller, is the American branch of the international group known as the Bilderbergers, and the United Nations is nothing more than a front for these international conspirators. Mr. Willard Cantillon, in his book, The Day the Dollar Dies, wrote on page 145 concerning this group. He said the world system will be praised and promoted by brilliant men. With elegance and apparent logic, they will persuade men that this is the path to peace and security. The world leader will rise to power with flattery and gain complete control of the military and monetary powers of all nations. Are you afraid?